For all those who've joined in, please bear with us. We'll kick off in approximately a minute from now. Let's give it another 30 seconds. All right, I think we are about ready to start. We have the required quorum. People will join in, if somebody's having tech issues. But welcome everyone. Welcome to this masterclass webinar from Knowlescape on Future Skills 2027, where we will help you understand the learning trends and strategies to navigate the skills of the future. Before we kick off, a few tech checks that I'd like to do and some housekeeping items. So if you can hear my voice clearly in the chat, either give a thumbs up, react with an emoji, that will let me know that I'm audible. Okay, I can see a few hands up. Great. Next is if you can see my screen clearly, again, give me a heads up, emoji. Perfect. Great. And lastly, most importantly, if you're ready to learn and have fun with us today, give us a thumbs up as well. Awesome. Once again, welcome everybody. We'll quickly go through the webinar agenda. Some of you here are familiar with Knowlescape, but for the benefit of everybody who's joining us for the first time, I will give a very brief introduction about the organization, how do we help organizations. Some of the trends that we are seeing personally when we speak to multiple organizations across the globe and specifically in APAC. And based on our recent report on the future of work and skills, we'll give you some interesting insights that have come out. And then lastly, how we can use those insights to help you transform L&D in the coming few months and years. And we'll end off with some Q&A. We have about 60 minutes to do this. Let's start. Before we do, I'd love to introduce my colleague to you. So my name is Aman. I lead the APAC region for Knowlescape, which is all of ASEAN, Greater China region, and Australia, New Zealand. I'm also joined today by Khyati, who heads our strategic partnerships. Khyati, welcome.
Thank you, Aman. Very excited for the webinar today.
Absolutely. And would love to hear the insights that you're seeing across the report.
Absolutely.
Great. So here at Knowlescape, we are quizzers at heart. We love asking questions and quizzing. So we'll start off with a very simple one. This quote, "To experience is to learn. Everything else is just information." Who said this quote? If you could enter it in the chat. I'll give you a quick hint. Unfortunately, it's not me. I wish I was that smart. But let's try and see if somebody can guess. Okay. I can see a few people answering. Great. I see Deepak saying Albert Einstein, Priyanka Einstein. Khyati, I don't think we had so many correct answers from the other side.
We didn't. And very quick, huh?
Yeah, very
Immediately.
good. I love Surya saying every L&D head ever as well. I wish Surya, but the correct answer is Albert Einstein. So congrats to those who got it. Unfortunately, we don't have real gifts. We'll be sending you virtual love from our end. But the reason we put up this quote is because as a company philosophy, we truly believe in this. Given the age of Gen AI, there is a lot of content out there, and that's no longer a problem, having access to content. I think what we are hearing from organizations, individuals across the world is how do you put what you've learned into practice, essentially through experiential learning, either through a digital platform or offline experiences. That's the core of everything we do at Nullscape through our experiential learning solutions. And that's a good segue for me to talk a little bit about us. We're the world's largest experiential learning technology company, directly present across 5 countries, which is the UK, US, India, Malaysia, and Singapore. In countries that we don't have a direct presence, we do work with a large partner network across countries like Japan, China, etc. We have over 100 plus experiential learning offerings on the platform. But we also have this extended network, apart from our partners, of these facilitators, coaches, who bring about our blended learning experiences to life. Of course, like any large technology company, our simulations are available across multiple languages. We've been fortunate enough to work with some of the leading brands in the world, and you'll see a few logos on the left-hand side. The important thing to note is you'll see a good mix of technology, financial services, consulting, consumer firms, which means our simulations are industry agnostic. We are also really, really proud to be associated with the fact that we've touched over 500,000 learners annually through our simulations, and we've been recognized by some of the leading global institutions. If you could move to the next slide. Generally, when we work with organizations across the globe, there are 2 core areas that we focus on. One is what we position as core skills. These are evergreen skills that are present across every organization. Every organization is struggling at some level with these skills. So under core skills, you have leadership readiness, digital readiness, and culture readiness. That's the piece that we work a lot on. And then post-pandemic, a lot of organizations have also come back to us and said that, your simulations are great to address the core skills, but a lot of, domains, roles are now blurring. And I'd love for you to give me solutions that are very, very contextual to my organization. So that's the part on contextual skills that we work with. If you look at some of the core skills, so under leadership readiness, we have succession management, leadership transition, leadership coaching. Digital readiness, we have digital mindset, digital awareness, AI readiness now. Under culture readiness, we have things like innovation, growth mindset, well-being, and empathy. Whereas for contextual skills, very, very specific to an organization or industries, things like values and culture, product training, regulation, compliance, right? For example, the way one bank will do their product training is going to be very different from the way another bank, even in the same country, does that. That's where we bring about our expertise of helping organizations solve this contextual skills problem. If you could move to the next slide. So that was a little bit about Nullscape. Now I will hand it over to Khyati for the more important part of walking you through this report, sharing some of these insights, and then we'll lead to a further discussion. Khyati, over to you.
Thank you, Aman. Thank you, and welcome everyone. We're so excited to share findings from the report with you. In the last few years, we've really understood that L&D is changing, and with new emerging technology, we're realizing that this one function is really being transformed at a pace like never before. And last year at Nullscape, we said, hey, we want to really understand what's going on with this function, with this space, with learning in general, with the future of work. So we designed a very comprehensive survey and we released it late last year. We had about 119 enterprises, all the way from managers, senior managers, CXOs, VPs in the L&D HR space participate in the survey. It was global. I think outside of the North and South Pole, we had respondents from all around the world. And of course, we had all industries, almost all industries, IT, BFSI, pharma, healthcare, e-commerce, consumer tech, that also participated in this. So it was very comprehensive. And this is a report that we will be sharing with you at the end of the webinar as well. But for the rest of the 60 minutes, we really wanted to share with you what we found in the report and how we're seeing this play out in the next few years. So let's start with key findings, right? An overview of what the report kind of brought out globally as well, and four key points, what we're going to look at, right? The first one is a no-brainer. I don't think this was a surprise to any of us. Artificial intelligence and automation has been the biggest disruptor that L&D has seen, I think, in the last 100 years, right? And especially with larger organizations that have 1,000+ employees and multiple offices, they're really feeling this pressure. L&D professionals are feeling it, HR professionals are feeling it, and I think even just operational leaders on how they can automate and how they can use AI. Aman, you're on the ground quite a bit, and I wanted to understand from you, are there any specific use cases of AI or any specific insights you have around the uses of AI in L&D that you're seeing?
Absolutely. Like you said, Kathy, I don't think I've ever been to any conversation, any conference, any meeting in the last 1 year where, AI or Gen AI has not come up. Uh, I think what's surprising to me is, at least in APAC, we are seeing a very strong preference towards organizations who are looking forward to adapting this technology. Yes, there are some concerns which we'll discuss later on, but generally, I think the overall sentiment is very positive. Uh, We've gone from that age where people thought this was just a buzzword to now people and organizations actually realizing that, these tools do bring about, increase in productivity, and how do we leverage them for, building the workforce. So definitely that sentiment is there. There was some concern early on, will AI take away our jobs? I think organizations have done a great job in mitigating that concern from employees. Specifically on L&D, we are seeing this is probably, I would say, the most interesting time to be in the L&D space. Across multiple organizations, industries that I've spoken to, some of the key trends are coming, things like AI personalized pathways, for example.
Yeah.
Digital solutions are great rolling it to a mass audience. I think the challenge that L&D professionals are facing is how do you bring about personalization when you scale it to, a training program to 10,000 people, for example. Now, thanks to these advancement, that personalization is taken care of. And I think that's the biggest shift that we are seeing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we've really, just within the last year, moved from AI being a content creation tool to AI being a tool that really helps us optimize the work that we do. So I'm very excited to see in the next year how different organizations also come up with more creative ways to use AI. And this brings me to my next point. I think how technology is evolving. And even with COVID, you'd mentioned that the lines between different skills and industries is blurring, right? And we're seeing that specifically now with certain sectors. I think you'll be able to speak a little bit more about it, given you're in Singapore. But we're seeing with IT, ITES, BFSI sectors that all of these sectors are looking for very specific skills which sit at the intersection of a few different industries or different functions, right? It's not specific to those. Are you seeing something in Asia around this evolution of industry-specific skills as well?
Absolutely. I think there are two aspects to this. One is within the industry, people are looking to go deeper into those skill sets. But also, in some cases, there is an intersection of multiple industries happening. For example, Singapore, Hong Kong are hotbeds of finance. Nowadays, every bank in Singapore or Hong Kong is expected to behave like a fintech and vice versa,
Uh,
right? Which means you
yeah.
need industry expertise from people coming in who have the industry expertise of both banks as well as fintech. So that's definitely putting a pressure on L&D as well as the employees to continuously upskill themselves.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I mean, IT, ITES, and BFSI categorically stood out in the report when we were looking at APAC. So I see why. And I think the next one is also very interesting. It's an evergreen topic. Leadership development, I think, has been a training topic for everyone from time immemorial. And I think L&D has also been focusing on that. But Aman, what was really interesting in the report was that 80% of the investments that are currently happening for leadership aren't actually being directed to the leaders in the organization, right? The area where it's being done now has moved to mid-career professionals, early career professionals and leadership training for them. So the amount of investment that's going into CXOs and -1 and -2 being trained, it's still there. It's not gone away, but it's reduced considerably. And you've been in this space for a while, so I wanted to understand from you, why do you think that shift is happening? Why do you think organizations are now spending and investing more on training their mid managers or their early career professionals on leadership?
Yeah, and that's a very interesting point you highlight, Khyati. I would say again, not one reason to this, multiple reasons playing out at the same time. One is just leadership as a concept has evolved, right? If you look at it 10 years back, because leadership principles were very different. Then came the pandemic. A lot of leaders were not prepared on how to lead in a virtual environment.
Yeah.
Now, they've barely recovered from that when you have, this age of Gen AI coming in. And now with, different generations of people in the workforce, it becomes even more difficult, right? So one is leadership skills need to adapt more. And what people are seeing is that leadership isn't just for leaders. It is, leadership for everyone. Succession planning is definitely big on a lot of these organizations that we are speaking to. So all of those are planning out. I think AI is also playing a big part in leveling the playing field. So AI investments are being made, not just for the senior folks, but across the organizations, because how organizations are seeing it is that, senior leaders will use AI to prioritize AI-driven decision making.
Yeah.
Middle level managers will use AI to focus on collaboration and productivity, whereas junior employees need AI skills for agility and technical skilling, for example. Uh, and all of these require a function of leadership, either for yourself, for your team, or for the organization. So I think a lot of L&D is realizing that I don't want to just spend bulk of my budget on sending 100 of my top leaders to a university in the US when I could, get more productivity gains across the entire organization.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's about showing ROI, right? And the most effective way to show ROI. And I think it's also, in my opinion, to build pipeline for leadership, because that's something that I think a lot of organizations have not thought about, and they're increasingly thinking about it. Right. And we have Rohini in the chat who also said that, interestingly, even though financial investment within certain groups for leadership training has increased, they're still highly disengaged. So that's a very interesting point, right? And she follows up by saying that maybe this is a way for us to engage people in certain subsets within the organization. So, I mean, others, if you have insights on this, we'd love to hear more about it. I hadn't thought about it from that standpoint. But this also brings me to the next point and the last key finding that we have. But before we get into that, we do have a very quick poll about diverse and multi-generational workforces, right? Increasingly, we're seeing that different generations are working together, and this has never happened, honestly, before in the past. So within your organizations, are you seeing this happen? And if you are, how are you managing this cultural change that comes in, with different, with someone who's 60 years old working with someone who's 18 years old? Because we are inherently, we interact with society differently, we interact with our friends differently, we consider our work differently.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see the results. And
Yeah.
you have a point of view of also doing this in other regions. So it'll be interesting to see how those trends shape up for, APAC versus Europe or NEMA.
Absolutely. We have a few comments in the chat as well. Priyanka also mentioned that pipeline management, I think pipeline development for mid-management has become very important, which is why investment for leadership training has kind of moved down the hierarchy. But I think it's a good trend in general. We'll give it 10 seconds more for the poll, and then we'll discuss what you all have replied as well. All right. I think we can close the poll now. We have close to 70 to 80% respondents. All right.
Great.
That's a very interesting
Yeah, what I'm seeing
Exactly.
is 68% people are saying that cross-functional, age-diverse teams for innovation, closely followed by reverse mentoring, cross-generational learning, and then a very close tie between flexible work policies, 44% people, versus AI-driven personalized training and upskilling. Curious to hear your views, Kathy.
So we've done this webinar with the Europe audience and the US audience as well a few weeks ago. And, reverse mentoring and cross-generational training actually did come up on top there as well. It's second here. And we've actually been proposing this to a lot of different large conglomerates as well that are now hiring in bulk young people, but they'll be reporting to, someone who's a CXO or a VP. And it works really well because you have someone who's, let's say, you have a younger person that's mentoring an older person. It helps motivate them. It helps keep them engaged within the organization. And in my experience, a lot of the younger employees in the organization are using tech in new ways, right? So it gives us kind of an insight. And I think cross-functional age diverse teams for innovation is a no-brainer. We see it at Northscape internally as well. We're a very diverse team. All of us have come from different places. We're all of different ages. And I completely agree. I think it works really well.
True. And I see this playing out in my teams. Within
Yeah.
APAC, my team loves to remind me that I'm the oldest in the group. And there's a lot that I can learn from them and vice versa.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think multi-generational workforces are the norm. It isn't going away. It's the first time it's happening. But it's a good thing. And especially in APAC, right, where you're seeing that a lot of the people entering the workforce right now are actually very young, as opposed to North America and Europe, where it's a little skewed towards people being older in the workforce. So in the next few years, I think we'll also see these global trends kind of play out differently in different regions.
Yeah. And I'm also interested how this affects learning dynamics and learning styles within organizations, right? Because again, it's 4 to 5 generations of people in the workforce. Everybody learns in
Mhm.
a different way. Curious to hear what your thoughts on that.
I agree. I agree. And Rumini in the chat has also told us it comes with its own challenges, but it's a good problem to have. And I completely agree. I think more innovation, more diversity, more points of view is always good in the workplace. And I think Zenobia and Surya also had a couple comments. We are going to pick these up. I'm going to park them for now, but we'll come back to these. The next thing, Aman, that I think the report highlighted was the top training or skill priorities that different organizations around the world have, right? And I'm not surprised to see leadership skill as a top priority. Given the day and age that we live in, you're supposed to be dynamic, you're supposed to be able to change quickly, you're supposed to have contextual leadership. A lot of this, I think, comes with practice, it comes with training. So that has been, I think, the key marker. What are your thoughts on, digital skills being a close contender or compliance awareness, for example, being lowest in the priority, even though when we go into meetings and we talk to clients, compliance is such a big topic. It's a burning issue for them.
Yeah. I'll start with leadership first, Kathy. And I think,
Mhm.
generally, like I said, the definition of leadership is also changing. I think with AI coming in, what organizations are also focusing, how can I get my leaders to be more AI driven? Because it's clear, and I don't know if you've heard this quote from the CEO of IBM. He says that AI will not replace leaders or managers. It will replace
Absolutely.
leaders and managers who don't use AI, right? So I think that's definitely playing out, and that's why it's a priority. Digital
Mhm.
skills is also very interesting. The way we are seeing this, at least in APAC, is, especially on the, manager side, people are saying that, look, I don't want my managers to, go and get into the technical details of the digital skills. I have my techies for that. What I'd love for them is to interpret that data. So, for example,
Yeah.
with one of the largest telecom companies in Malaysia, we are running what we call a data visualization simulation for 600 of their managers, where the simulation does not teach them on how to do a pie chart or a log chart, but how do you interpret what that data is telling you. And that's an interesting play that's coming out.
Absolutely. And I think it's about knowing how to use the technology, how to implement it, not really knowing how to build it, right? Not everybody needs to know that. And I just want to double click on the skills itself a little bit more and look at what the drill down taught us about that. Like you mentioned, top priority is digital literacy and data analytics for managers. I think we're seeing that. It was no surprise to us that that came up. And again, strategic thinking and data driven decision making was a close second. My assumption, Aman, is that this is happening because at every level within the organization, you're asked to make decisions or to drive certain work. In an environment where you might not have the complete picture, you might not have all the information, and you still have to be strategic, resources are limited. So I think it's very important for everyone to kind of learn these skills, and L&D professionals are also working towards it. What was interesting to me is that emotional intelligence and empathy, design thinking and innovation, and cybersecurity, which were very, very hot topics in the last few years, have actually ranked a little bit lower on this survey. Any
Yeah.
thoughts? Rohini is also agreeing with me. Actually, it's EI is down in the list.
Yeah. One caveat I'd love to say is that when we say low priority skills, it does not mean that organizations are not prioritizing this. It is just in
Mhm.
comparison to the top ranked skills. These have probably shifted over time. They're still important, but perhaps not as important as what they were. Uh, if I take something as cybersecurity awareness, right? It was a
Yeah,
hot topic maybe 5, 6 years ago. I think what's happened is a lot of organizations have done the basic awareness training for, all the entire organization. Now it's probably limited to the people who actually are into cybersecurity as a field, and they're going through a deeper training on that, and probably that's why it's being deprioritized. Similarly, design thinking and innovation. Uh, I would also say is because of the changes with, AI coming in, the processes leading to design thinking will probably require some changes. And that's why
absolutely.
people are taking a backseat and saying that, hey, let us first figure that out, and then we could come and, rework on some of the concepts that we have learned. But interesting, somehow in APAC, I still see a lot of conversations around EI and empathy. It's again important, but perhaps maybe, it's shifting of budgets as well.
Yeah, I think so much saying the same thing. It's just given the climate that we're in. Surya also mentioned it in a different context. I think the focus has shifted towards
Yeah.
using technology a certain way. But yeah, I agree. I don't see EI and empathy going anywhere. I think they're still evergreen topics.
Despite
Um,
what Trump is doing, it's definitely important.
yeah, especially in APAC. I don't think that's
Absolutely.
going anywhere. Um, so what we were seeing, the findings that we shared so far were global. What we're going to look at now is region specific, right? So we're looking at everything from India all the way to Australia and the Far East as well, and see what we found here. Uh, the first thing that we want to do before we start this is do a very quick poll with you all on again a very hot topic in L&D, measurement, right? Measurement of the outcomes, measurement of L&D initiatives. So it's a 3-question poll. Very quickly, we'll give you 45 seconds. Tell us what you think. We want to understand from you what you're doing in terms of measuring business KPIs, ROI for L&D. And the reason we're doing this is because at Nordscape, we're very intentional with data for ourselves, for our clients that we work with. And, we want to understand what your best practices are as well.
And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing the results on this. Again, like I was saying, Khyati, never been in a meeting in the last 1 year where, AI has not come in. I think a second close contender is probably ROI on L&D. It's been a pain point for a lot of organizations. So curious to see if that again comes up in the poll results.
Absolutely. And talent intelligence as well. That's another buzzword that we're seeing quite a bit. I think 50% of all respondents, participants have answered. Guys, it's not a quiz, it's not a test. We just want to understand what you're thinking, what you're feeling. So do answer this. It gives us insight in terms of um, what's going on with y'all as well. We're looking to learn from you. We give it 20 more seconds. All right, I think we can close the poll. Let's look at the results that we have. So Aman, we start with the first one.
How well do you know your business KPIs? So 48% are saying somewhat I struggle to understand. I understand the KPIs, but I struggle with alignment. 37% are saying I can clearly map L&D impact to KPIs, which is very encouraging. And 15% saying that I need more clarity on how L&D connects to KPIs.
It's good though. I mean, I think people that are, who understand KPIs and how L&D maps to it, or have a basic understanding as well. I think that's a start. So it's good
Yeah.
to see that our audience is more or less aligned to their business metrics.
Yeah. Very interestingly, on the second question on how happy are you with your data collection, majority is saying that somewhat satisfied. We do track some, but it lacks depth. Uh, so maybe an interesting point for some of the technology partners to work on then.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to see, if people that are on the call, you can tell us what your best practices are in terms of mapping to certain KPIs or collecting data and analytics, right? Just to share with the audience as well what's working for you. It'll be very, very helpful. But coming back to the report, I think it was very interesting, Aman, for me to look at the regional trends and even the global trends and realize that APAC as a region and India, South Asia included, was very big on tracking productivity improvement. Whereas when we looked at the data across the Americas and Europe, we saw that business KPI alignment was actually a larger priority. Um, so I wanted to understand from you as well, with the conversations that you're having, when people come to you with impact measurement or problem discovery, what's your sense? What's working for them? What's not? What's the ask?
Yeah, I think, and this might be slightly controversial. I'd love to hear other opinions in the chat. Generally, the trend I'm seeing when I speak to people is APAC is traditionally a very, very results-oriented market, which is why a lot of people are saying that, productivity is going to be priority for me. I'm paying you X dollars, I expect Y in return. That could be one of the reasons, but I'd be curious to hear other opinions in the chat as well.
I agree. I think it's also cultural. You've got countries like India, China, parts of Southeast Asia that are very focused from a very young age on productivity. Not to say that it doesn't happen in Europe, but I think culturally we're just very focused on that one outcome from whether it's our academics, whether it's work. And that reflects in how L&D teams in this region are also kind of measuring their impact, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I see Surya has mentioned as well. ASEAN is very value for money oriented as opposed to cost conscious.
Yeah.
Trust me, Surya, in my negotiations with L&D leaders in APAC, it's a very different outcome as compared to Europe.
And Shrestha is asking, how do you measure productivity? Shrestha, literally before the webinar, Amar and I were discussing, hey, we've actually not found like this one silver bullet that can do that, right? There are ways to measure behavior, skills, ROI, but like productivity itself, it can be interpreted and measured in many different ways. There's no one way to do it. So I think we also kind of wonder sometimes, internally what we need to do, what the data needs to look like, or even with our clients. But a lot of times it's very contextual as well.
And also with learning, Khyati, I think it's easy to measure some areas within L&D spend. So, for example, if I spent X dollars on training, how many people was I able to retain or
Yeah.
not additionally hire? But productivity increase, it becomes a little gray area. How do you know that because an employee went through a particular training, they became more productive? It could have happened a lot of reasons. So there are some areas, but some things you should be measuring. What I've realized is even some of the basic things a lot of organizations are not measuring, uh,
Hmm.
but it's becoming increasingly important. We talk about CHROs and CLOs getting a seat on the table. I think CFOs are clearly asking that question. And I think the onus is now also shifting to training partners like Knowlescape, where
Yeah.
L&D leaders are saying that, hey, thanks to these AI advancements, can you help design better analytical, data-driven dashboards that help me and my teams showcase this to the rest of the board?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's something that we work on quite a bit. And we'll be showing you a few examples of how we've done this for a couple of our clients. But I think AI has made it very easy to collect data if you're able to use the tool in the right way. But Aman, it doesn't come without its issues, right? Which was another thing we kind of asked in the report. We said, what are your fears or ethical considerations that you take into account when you start looking at AI-based L&D solutions? Right? And the first one, and this has been, I think, a blanket around the world, across different regions as well. Privacy and data security has been the biggest concern that L&D professionals, HR professionals are listing as a reason why they're kind of cautious about using AI. Right? A close second is ensuring a human-centric approach. This one has the highest score across APAC. I'm wondering if that's also because of the culture that we have in this region.
Absolutely. I'm not surprised by that. I think, again, APAC or ASEAN is a very face-to-face market. People prioritize human connections. Uh, Even if you look at learning solutions, right? There's, I think, a clear report that came out, maybe last year, which compared, the top MOOC platforms having
Mhm.
consumption rates of only maybe between 8 to 20%. But when you
Absolutely.
combine, that a digital solution like an Oldscape simulation with a classroom format, that consumption jumps up to 80 to 100%, right? So people do value that human centric approach here. So definitely not surprised by this.
Yeah, and I think last year a lot of the conversation we were having was, oh, tech's gonna replace us, we're gonna lose our jobs. But I think we need to really look at it from a standpoint of how can I use the tech to kind of enable myself, my learners. So it's high tech plus high touch, not just high tech.
Correct.
Right? And there are ways, and I think there are some companies doing phenomenal work in terms of bringing these two different models together and providing learning to their employees, right? But as we speak about AI, and I understand that it's very expensive technology, right? Even for us internally, we do spend a lot of money on R&D and making sure that the solution is robust. I do want to speak about the challenges that L&D professionals are facing, and we did ask them in the report as well, what's working for you, what's not. And I'm not surprised that 52% of all organizations that responded from this region said that budget constraints are an issue. In fact, it wasn't just in APAC. I think we saw this across the world where they said budget is probably the biggest issue. Aman, what's your sense on why this is? Do you also see this when you speak to different clients?
Absolutely. I think so. Again, couple of factors that play into this. Generally, global headwinds, people are becoming more cautious on what they
Yeah.
spend. Everybody's asking the question that can I get more bang for my buck? So people, earlier if three people were taking a decision, now that pool has expanded to maybe 10 people having a say in that decision. Uh, a lot of people in the last 1 year organization have also experimented with AI tools and technologies in various ways. And like you said, that's not, cheap. These are expensive sort of pilots that they've run. What I think people are realizing and a lot of organizations are still struggling is that they're past that awareness stage, but they've not really seen a lot of gains of those small pilot. It's worked in some functions and some teams, but not across the organization. So definitely, I think people are saying that maybe I take a step back, control my budget, and then ensure that the spend is justified.
I agree. I agree. And I think it's important to understand the tech as well to make sure that you're able to integrate it well with your current system as opposed to overhauling it. Next, what we did was we obviously work with 400 plus organizations around the world, but we really wanted to know how we can be the best workforce transformation partner to our clients. So we asked the professionals that responded to the report, what are you looking for this year? What's a focus area for you? And I'm not surprised that personalized learning paths ranked first, right? Even in the chat, I think a lot of people were speaking about how personalization, having a not having a one-size-fits-all approach is what they're looking for with L&D. Aman, what was surprising here for me was that APAC, against all of the other regions and even globally, prefers micro-learning and on-demand content more. We didn't see such an uptick for it across the Americas or Europe as well. I'm wondering if that again has to do with the generational demographic of this region.
I agree. I mean, Asia in general has a younger workforce compared to the other regions. A lot of the younger generation wants to learn on the go, wants short, crisp, TikTok style content. Uh, but I think that's where we also need to draw a fine line that how do you make that content short form, yet engaging and yet tie it to those business outcomes, and not just any, sort of gamification. So it has to be tied to real outcomes, competencies that the organization wants their workforce to build.
Absolutely. It's a tall order, huh? Engaging, short, gamified, tied to business outcomes.
It is, it is. But like I said, this is probably the most exciting time for L&D. If not, it definitely has a lot of challenge, but it's going to be a huge enabler as well.
Yeah, completely agree. And speaking of enablers, I think we didn't want to do a webinar where we only spoke to the audience about the report and the challenges and the data points, right? When we finished the report, we also actually came up with a 5-phase plan, which L&D professionals can implement within their organizations to build a very robust L&D function, right? All the way from doing a baseline survey to see where they are right now to helping them build a culture of continuous learning within teams. So the onus of learning is then on everyone within the organization and not just the L&D team. So what we're going to do over the next 10 minutes is, everyone, we're going to walk you through what these 5 phases are and also give you examples of how we've been helping organizations implement these, right? We're very, very big fans of learning by doing. I think you've figured that out already. So we want to show you how we've done this for a few of our partners as well. Aman, over to you with phase 1, if you want to walk us through this.
Sure. And I'll again not spend a lot of time on this. I guess, most people have done this, but before you implement anything and put a plan into action, you need to have a foundation for that. So the first thing, if you're already not doing this, is ensure that you're conducting a skills gap analysis. Make sure you know does business want, what are your current skills level versus future skill level. Engage with your stakeholders, engage with your business leaders, managers to align those objectives to the business goals. Because like I said, at the end, you will be asked to justify how you're affecting business outcomes. And then take a look at your current L&D infrastructure. Do you have the right learning platforms? Do you have the right HR systems? Do you have the right technologies and training tools to put this into motion? Once you've done that is typically when you move to phase 2, which is then taking all of that and aligning it with business metrics, right? So from the very go, even before you've rolled out an L&D program, the team should define what are the L&D metrics that are directly contributing to business success, right? Whether it's employee productivity, whether it's retention, whether it's increase in revenue. And it's perfectly fine not to get all of this 100% at the start, right? Even if you can't measure impact to revenue 100%, that's perfectly fine. There should be some level of planning to get to that stage. The other is, you can't track what you don't measure. So make sure that you have these data-driven learning dashboards. Any learning system that you're evaluating, make sure they have these analytics to track learner engagements, progress, all of that built in. And then make sure any other training that you're running, again, leads to, if you're, for example, a bank, then it has to lead to CSAT increased scores. If you're a business leader and doing sales training, it has to lead to revenue growth. So clearly aligning those foundations with the business metrics. And I know you have a very interesting case study, Chati, on how we did this for a particular client.
Absolutely, absolutely. Easier business metric to measure, but nonetheless, I think it was very interesting for us to work on this. So one of the largest tech and design firms in the world came up to us and said, "Hey, we're doubling our headcount within a year. We're hiring close to 2,000 people every quarter." And what's happening is culture is becoming an issue and we don't know what to do about it. And I'm sure that it's having an outcome on my business as well. So can you come in and help us identify this? So we conducted a baseline and we realized that culture was definitely an issue. So they were on the right track. Right, they'd hired a lot of young people during COVID, so they'd never been to office, they never met their employees face to face, and that was becoming a challenge. And this was actually causing issues with retention, with attrition, with high potential identification for them. So we designed a program for them called Action to Work. It's a self-paced course with two differentiated levels, one for a younger audience that's joining the organization and one for senior leaders. And we rolled it out to 10,000 users initially, right? And 6 months post the program had been run, they had a 5% increase in retention. They had a 15% increase in high potential identification as well. And essentially, the program was such a success and it was a simulated program. So, this is a custom simulation that was built for this organization where you're actually going through different scenarios where your alignment to company values is being tested. So by the time they finish it, they get a report saying, okay, you're aligned to this value, speak to this person for this value. This is how you can align further to this value as well. So L&D teams are getting a lot of insight on who's aligned, who's not aligned, what intervention is required to align them. Do you want early exits done so your retention and attrition is not an issue? So a lot of insight also. And now this program is compulsory for anyone that's joining the organization. So we have a few thousand people going through this every quarter. And they also use this as a refresher for people that have spent X amount of years in the organization just to teach them again what the values are. This was one of our largest engagements when it comes to baseline and business KPI alignment. But I'll move on. The next one I think is also very interesting.
Before
Alignment.
that, Khyati, there are a few questions in the chat. I think people really love the case study and the outcomes. If I can take one question, is Priyanka asking, what did you cover in Action at Work? And then Surya is asking, how can adoption be improved? Because getting employees on the platform is the biggest challenge we face.
Absolutely. So the first one, Aman, is Action at Work, where essentially we understood what the company culture was, what their core values were, and we designed scenarios for them where the learner is going through different situations where their alignment to core values is being tested. So the self-paced course first introduces you to the company culture, to the values, and once they've learned that, they apply this in a sandbox environment where they're essentially able to see whether they're aligned to the company values. For example, if your company value is customer centricity, they were given a situation where a customer maybe is being difficult, or you have to take a very difficult decision in your role regarding the customer to see if you're aligned to the company value or you understood it or not. And all the data that was collected was then sent to the different reporting managers as well to ensure that the learner is getting personalized support to align to certain company values if they aren't already. And Surya, in terms of adoption for this specific program, it's compulsory. So your onboarding is not complete till you've not finished this program and you have your report, right? In terms of other programs that you take up later, I think adoption comes when the business leader also has buy-in for the program or the training that you're running, because they have to approve the person leaving the job for X number of hours or days. So my input here would be, I think aligning to business becomes important. But with this specific one, it was compulsory. There was no way you couldn't go through this. I'll move on though to the next one very quickly. We have about 10 minutes.
Great. So this is where, really we see the power of AI coming into L&D. Almost all learning platforms these days need to have elements of AI built in to personalize learning pathways based on roles, performance data, etc. We are also seeing a lot of organizations start to implement AI chatbots into learning, where you can interact with these experts, virtual coaches. The one thing to keep in mind is, how do you make sure that, just like ChatGPT, the AI coach or chatbot does not hallucinate? I know, Khyati, you will have a point of view on this.
Yeah.
How do you use AI to tailor, essentially make adaptive learning experiences for employees?
Absolutely. And the next case study, honestly, Aman, is one of my personal favorites. It's where the rubber hits the road. And it was also one of our most innovative AI solutions that we've built in the last year, where a very large global consulting firm came up to us and said, hey, we have a lot of young emerging consultants that are going to move into client-facing roles. And the nature of the job it's just difficult. It's a high-pressure environment. There's a lot of revenue and relationships at stake, not just for us, but for the clients as well. So one small mistake can honestly cost millions of dollars to us and to the client. So we have to make sure that these young people, before they go into this environment, this very difficult environment, are trained effectively. And our current classroom training is not cutting it. So we said, okay, keep your classroom training, right? Do what you're doing in terms of knowledge transfer, but let's allow us to build a risk-free, hands-on training environment where they can apply this learning, right? And that's where AI came into the picture. We built a custom simulation that was trained on the consulting models that this specific organization has. And we looked at client management skills, analytical skills, crisis management skills as a few core areas that we were testing within this. And it was adaptive entirely. So, Aman, if you and I were to play this simulation, right, we record our video, we give our response to the client. The kind of feedback that both of us would get would be very different because we've both given different responses. The follow-up question that the AI avatar asks us in this would also be different because it's realized that you and I both have different skill sets and require support in different places. So it's one solution, but it can be used across different teams, different geographies to train a subset of people. And it's meeting the learner where they are, right? And this particular one had video analysis as well. So you're looking at confidence levels, how many filler words you're using, your communication skills in these environments where you're talking to CXOs as well. And on training the AI, we were very, very careful. So it took us months on end to do this, especially with this one. We were figuring out what works, what doesn't. And internally, we built a lot of robust systems to make sure that the AI is not hallucinating. You're getting the right kind of answer. At no point can you type gibberish into the simulation and then get a response saying, "Oh, good job," right? So a lot of R&D went into this as well. But I think eventually this is one of my most favorite solutions. And for everyone in the audience out there, if you just want to understand honestly how AI is being used by different organizations for contextual personalized learning, do reach out to us. We'll do a very quick demo for you with this and show you how this works.
And I love personalization. I think it just brings an extra magic element to the way people learn. But then you need to also complement that with flexible learning solutions, especially in APAC, like we've shared before. Very different market. You need a blended approach where it's also human-centered. So you need to not just have a self-paced online library, but you need to combine that with in-person workshops, with experiential learning. One of the ways at Knowlescape we tackle this is, while all our solutions, all our simulations can be done in a self-paced format, a lot of our organizations and customers that we work with like to run this in journeys where they interperse these simulations with an in-person workshop, which happens through our extended facilitator network who've been trained on those simulation methodologies. And that removes a lot of challenges that typically come with just on-demand learning, self-paced. So make sure you have that approach as well if that's an impact area that you want to focus on. Yeah, Kathy, I think phase 5, if you could change the slide, I'm still seeing phase 4.
Oh, sorry about that. I lost your audio for a second. Yes, there you go.
And then I think phase 5 is probably the most critical one. Once you've done all the hard work, how do you make sure that continue to build on that success? So there has to be a culture of continuous learning, adaptability. You cannot just run a training program and then say we'll look at this next year. You have to create incentives for lifelong learning, either through career development pathways, through certifications. Also embed this learning into daily workflows, right? So how do you get AI nudges to work while people are on the job as well? So all of that is something you should definitely look at as part of phase 5. Once you've done everything, make sure that the culture of continuous learning continues to perform like a engine.
I agree. And I think, Aman, here it's also very important to kind of, it has to be top down. So, from senior leaders to managers kind of saying, hey, we want to keep learning. We want to train our teams and incentivize our teams and motivate them to keep learning. I think it starts with L&D, but it's L&D kind of building this culture within the organization, right? And our solution for this one is also, again, very interesting. It came also to us and we started working on it under very funny circumstances. So Raj is a leading business school professor at the University of Texas at Austin, and he has built this beautiful simulation called Happiness at Work across, which is based on his model of well-being in the workplace. Again, one of our highest selling solutions that we see across the world. And he does trainings for a lot of different organizations. So he's working with the US government, he's working with large consulting firms, he comes to do trainings at leading institutions in India as well. Um, and every time he finishes a training, a lot of professionals go up to him and say, hey, Raj, I'm struggling in the workplace. I'm really want to make my team happier. I want to make my department happier. I want to be happier in the workplace. And I don't know where to go to ask these questions. Can I email you? And at one point, he showed me his inbox had thousands of unread emails from people that are just like, we attended your training, we loved it. Can you continue helping us? And he said, Kathy, if I could clone myself and give myself to each and every person to make the world a happier place, I would do it. So, do you have ideas? So we went back to the drawing board and we said, hey, you know what, Raj? I think we might be able to, in part, make a clone of you. And we built this coach. It's called the Genie Coach. It's got Raj's voice. We're also testing models where it would speak to you the way Raj would, or use, body language the way Raj would. And it's trained entirely on Raj's data and his research. So when you go in and you say, hey, Raj, one of my team members is not motivated and I don't know what to do, the coach will give you suggestions, will ask you questions, will interact with you in the same way that a mentor would. So you're not taking the learner out of the work or out of their workplace to do training. They're actually learning on the job, on the go, which I also think is kind of the future of learning. You want that kind of technology with you present on the job.
Very interesting, Kathy. And wherever I've shown the demo of Dr. Raj's AI coach, people have been blown away. I do want to get your thoughts on one question that always comes up, and it probably will be on the mind of participants here, is how different is this from, let's say, a chat GPT conversation where I could go and ask the same question?
That's a very good question. And it's actually different, Aman, because what happens is ChatGPT, although effective, will give you a generic answer, right? That's one. Second, your data is not private. It is going into a large learning model. We have no control over how that data is being used. What we do here is we're using a large learning model, a large language model, but we're building guardrails around it. And the guardrails are built using Raj's data. It's proprietary, it's not public, it's his lectures, his research papers, it's even just research data points that he's collected, which obviously is not available to a larger audience, the book that he has, for example. And if you were to ask it a question that's not related to happiness or well-being, it will say, hey, I can't answer this. I'm not the right person to answer this for you. Right? So we're ensuring that the model is not hallucinating. We're ensuring that your data stays with a certain in a safe parameters, not going outside. And we're making sure that this is trained on very exclusive proprietary data. So also working with a lot of different other organizations to see how we can build organizational wide bots or coaches that can help you with data or information within the organization. In fact, we want to do this in-house as well for all the knowledge that we have at Northscape for our employees. Um,
Wow.
but I
I
think,
love that. Uh,
yes,
I think
please.
it answers the challenge that we lot face. And I remember,
Mhm.
somebody telling me that, with the LLMs now in place, content is no longer going to be a differentiator. It is going to be expertise, right? And I think that's what's being done here, is that you're leveraging expertise that is only resides with an expert like Dr. Raj. So yeah, great.
Absolutely. And with that, I think we wanted to thank everyone for attending the webinar. I know we're a little bit behind on time. We wanted about 7 minutes for questions. But we do have 2 minutes, and anyone who wants to stay back for another 5 minutes to ask us questions, we're happy to chat with you. Before you all go, we do have a QR code link to download the report that we discussed with you. So please feel free to do so. There was a lot of questions in the chat about the different case studies, pricing for custom solutions, the slides as well. Our team will be reaching out to you to have conversations around this, or our team can also just send you the slides if you want to see this. And I think alternatively, if there's any part of the your L&D strategy that you're struggling with in 2025, please feel free to reach out to us. Even if you don't work with Noldscape or pick up a gamified solution, we just love to help understand what's happening with you and bounce ideas with you. And outside of that, also tell you what we're doing with other organizations. I think it'll be an interesting give and take. And outside of that, if there are best practices that you want to share that you're doing already and you want to tell us about those, we're more than happy to hear and learn from you.
I do see a lot of chatter in the chat around case studies. So definitely, Arunama, others who are asking this, like Khyati said, our team will be reaching out to you.
Yes.
And somebody will be there to, one is share the slides, the recording, but also answer any follow-up questions you might have.
Yes. And we can take, I think, spend another 2-3 minutes in case you all have any questions that you want to ask us, any comments, any feedback. We're happy to hear from you, understand from you, speak with you now. So I'm assuming a lot of the conversations will be happening offline for our someone. I've got the QR code back on. If you can't download the report now, that's also fine. We can send it to you later. Our team will be in touch with you. So, all right. I think with that, we don't have too many questions. We should be able to close the webinar now. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. It was a pleasure hosting this for you. Thank you, Aman, for all the insights that you brought in. It's been great. And we look forward to being in touch with all of you in the next few weeks.
Likewise, Khyati. And I think more than my insights, I learned a lot from all that happened in the chat. I think we had a very engaging audience. So thank you
Absolutely.
again for making this a success. Hopefully you took a lot of takeaways from this. And like Khyati said, even if you don't work with us in the future, we'd be happy to still share our point of view, learn from you, and also share what we are seeing with other organizations. Thank you once again. Have a great day, rest of the week. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.